Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at Hawk Blogger, and as of late, you can find me every morning here on Hawk Blogger Mornings as we count down toward the draft. The NFL draft is fast approaching, and as eager as we all are to see that unfold in Detroit, interesting to see how few players are actually going to be in attendance. It sounds like 13 players are committed to being there in Detroit. Maybe Detroit's not the draw. Maybe the NFL supposedly doesn't want people sitting in the green room and not getting selected. I don't know. It's not the same as it used to be, but it still will be a momentous day for the Seahawks one way or another. And in today's episode, I am going to continue this kind of march through different position groups and figuring out what makes sense for the Seahawks, which players we might like, get a little bit more information, round robin from different analysts and different ways of assessing these prospects, and deciding whether any of those guys increase their odds of being a Seahawk, decrease their odds, someone that we like, someone that we don't like. We will learn that together. As you probably can tell, I don't do a lot of pre-prep for these. I just go in and I learn along with you and have questions and try to get answers along with you. And hopefully this is helping you kind of get a little bit more info about your Seahawks and about your new coaching staff and about these prospects as we go through it. So this is a great time to click like and click subscribe if you haven't already. We are growing the YouTube channel almost at 10,000 subscribers. Would love to get up there today to do that. And increasingly, these shows are going to be YouTube only shows. And so definitely that is the place that you are going to want to be to watch them live. And then the audio versions that are uploaded immediately after the show are only available to Patreon members. So patreon.com/hawkblogger gets you access to all the audio versions of this show. And so if you want to listen live, great, YouTube's your place. If you want to listen as you walk or jog or do whatever, then being a patron is the way to do it. Patreon.com/hawkblogger. One last thing, and I forgot to do this. You can find this link as well in the actual description of the video. But if you'd like to join as a YouTube member, I am going to post the link there in the chat. That is now in there. So feel free to join. And good morning to Jacob Moon, Hawk fan Matt Man, and Corey Hickok, all YouTube members. Happy to have you this morning. Thanks for supporting the show. Obviously, really appreciate it. I got some requests or input from folks. They'd like to, as we do these prospects deep dives and even just general shows, they'd love to have in the description of the video a little bit more timelines for when I talk about certain players or certain topics. It's a fair amount of extra work for me to do that post production. But what I'm going to try today is I'm going to share a screen with a list of some players, and you'll be able to see me fill in some of the rankings and grades as we go along. And so hopefully that will give you an idea. If you are watching and feel like it and want to tell me in the chat a timestamp as I move on to a different player, that would be great. And it might allow me to, with less work, add in the timestamps for different players when they get covered along the way. So great way to kind of help out if you'd like to, but no need to if you do not want to. Feel free to just listen in. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm not going to yet necessarily share my screen just yet. The first thing I wanted to do is, again, looking at the Ravens roster, I wanted to kind of get an idea for the types of players that that Mike McDonald used as a Ravens coordinator last year. And specifically, since we're focusing today on edge rushers, I think this is a particularly different type of position to look at and can really vary based off of different teams. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back to last year and just make sure I've got this correct. So um, Mike McDonald used, we've talked about this, a more typical 3-4. And when I say more typical, you see the things like a really big nose tackle, like a Michael Pierce, 355-pound nose tackle. Travis Jones as a backup, 340 pounds, whatever he was. Seahawks didn't have that kind of nose tackle last year. Jaron Reed was their primary nose tackle, and he's playing at just over probably 305, something like that. Cam Young was a guy they drafted as a nose tackle. When he's drafted, he was in the 305, 310 range. I think they said he got up to 320, but don't know. Just definitely a different body type. And what the implication there is then there are defensive ends. And in a 4-3, a defensive end, can be anywhere from 260 to 280 pound player, different types of defensive ends. But in a 4-3, those guys are going to have to hold up quite well against the run on the edges and also be pretty bendy pass rushers, depending. There's, a 5-tech defensive end is a little bit different. That doesn't necessarily need to be as much, depending on what kind of defense you're playing of a pass rusher, but definitely can be a little larger. For years, we were used to the Leo pass rusher and Pete Carroll's defense being the Chris Clemens type, the 260, full-time pass rusher, essentially. And in that defense, the Leo, which was one defensive end in that defense, was essentially interchangeable with the Sam, which is an outside, a strong side linebacker that played on the line of scrimmage. And so that's where Bruce Irvin played, but he also could switch into Leo in his first year. He was a Leo. This is a different group. And so when you look at the Ravens, you've got their defensive ends are big guys. Like Justin Madubuike is 300 pounds plus. Broderick Washington, 300 pounds plus. These are bigger players. I think even Brent Urban was, a big 300 pounds plus. So Jaron Reeds of the world would almost profile more as defensive ends in Mike McDonald's defense last year. It doesn't mean he's going to do the same thing, but it is a different kind of defensive end than Chris Clemens. Okay. Different kind of defensive end than, Cliff Averill, right? Different kind of player, even different than Michael Bennett, a little bit more similar, but still different. Michael Bennett was a lighter, 290 pound, sometimes 280 pound kind of guy. But when you go to their edge rushers, which were not their defensive ends, and that's why I'm going to have to keep clarifying as we go through this, edge rusher versus defensive end. You're talking about their outside linebackers, and that was Jadeveon Clowney. And, Jadeveon Clowney, I don't know what he played at last year. Let's take a quick look. Jadeveon Clowney played around 300 pounds. Oh, no, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm reading the wrong thing. Jadeveon Clowney paid around 270 pounds, supposedly last year. He always looks bigger to me than that, but he's in the 260 to 270 pound range. Opposite of Jadeveon Clowney was Odafe Owe. And if we look at, let's look at Ravens. One second, folks. As I said, I'm doing this all real time, but want to get as accurate of information as possible. So let's go. All right. Okay. So yes, Jadeveon Clowney about 265 to 270 pounds. Why is this so unnecessarily complicated? All right. Odafe Owe, about 257 pounds. Kyle Van Noy, 250 pound. Tavius Robinson, 258 pounds. David Ojabo, 265 pounds. So you're getting basically between like 250 to 260 is about the weight of the outside linebackers in this, ranging from 6'3" was the smallest at Kyle Van Noy to 6'6" as the larger ones. And that was Tavius Robinson. So keep that in mind, 250 to 260, and maybe up to 270 at the very highest weight. And if you look at the Seahawks roster, one sec, from last year, you get a different look. So who are the players that fit that mold? As I mentioned with Jaron Reed, 306 is what they mentioned him last year. So bigger. Mike Morris, who we've talked about, more of a defensive end, was playing up towards 300. Draymond Jones, we've talked about it on this show, in no man's land, 281 pounds. He is neither, a defensive end nor an outside linebacker in at least by Mike McDaniel's profiles of what he had last year. And then you get into Derek Hall, who is 252 pounds, a little bit on the lighter side. You've got Darrell Taylor, who's 267 pounds, so more of the Jadeveon Clowney size. Unfortunately, not of the Jadeveon Clowney production. You've got Uchenna Nwosu, who is smaller, 6'2", 251, so on the lighter side, the Kyle Van Noy level. Boye Mafe, who's 6'4", 261, so he's right in the right range. And I think those are the main guys: Darrell Taylor, Boye Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu, and Derek Hall. So they've got a few guys that are in that range. And as we look at the draft board here, which I will now bring up, these are the guys that I am going to start talking through today. So hopefully you guys are able to see this. Let me know in chat how that's showing up for you. I'm going to see if I can collapse this a little bit more. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. Is this better or is this worse? That's maybe a little bit better. Okay. So these are the guys that I am going to go through. If you are listening and you are not watching, the names on this list, if we're able to get through all of them, I can't promise we will, and I can't promise that I might not deviate from this, but the plan as of now is Dallas Turner, Laiatu Latu, Jared Verse, Darius Robinson, Marshawn Kneeland, Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, Chris Braswell, Bralen Trice, Jonah Elliss, Grayson Murphy, and Brennan Jackson. I can explain a little bit about how I picked some of these guys, but a lot of it's based off of different rankings I've read and different players. And then toward the end, there's some players that I know either the Seahawks have shown interest in or I'm curious about and want to get a little more information. All right, everybody ready to get started here? Here we are at the 14-minute mark of the show. We are going to get into our first player. This is Dallas Turner. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through what we've been doing. Where does he rank? So in Lance Zierlein's, he is number 2 among edge rushers, and the grade that he gives him is a 6.72. We will talk about what that means in a second. If you go to Dane Brugler's ranking, Dane Brugler ranks Dallas Turner as first among edge rushers, and he gives him he gives him number 14 overall on his big board. PFF has Dallas Turner as 16th overall on their big board. Number 2 among among edge rushers. And then Raz, Mr. Turner has a, is that old? I think that's old. There we go. Dallas Turner has a 8.82 Raz, which, for what it's worth, ranks 206th out of 1,738 defensive ends from 1987 to 2024. And again, defensive end is a really complicated way to describe these guys. Let's go ahead and talk about Dallas Turner in a little bit more detail. We're going to talk about first where Lance Zierlein references him. Dallas Turner in most cases is projected to go ahead of the Seahawks, but there are some situations where he could fall back to the Seahawks at 16. I don't think that is crazy. I think it's in the realm of possibilities. That is why I'm spending a few moments on him here. Lance Zierlein compares him to Brian Burns. He says he's long and athletic with explosive traits needed to become an impactful NFL pass rusher. First step quickness is elite. Closing burst has elite closing burst and important. These are important building blocks, but he still needs to work on his process from point A to point B. He hasn't learned to create the space and angles needed to consistently attack the edges, but should come with better hand development and more diversified approach. A team would be wise to widen him out and allow him a better runway to ignite his burst and overwhelm tackles with speed. He added 20 pounds since coming to Alabama, but he struggles at times to stack and shed run blockers or set a firm edge. I got to tell you my bias going into this. I don't want more Darrell Taylor profiled players. I don't want guys that are supposedly strong pass rushers, but do not hold up in the run. I don't want that. I want guys that can do both. I want them to be able to be strong at the point of attack and be effective edge rushers. And that's biased my view of these guys. So you'll see that as we go through, but that's a big knock against for me. Turner's frame and game are much less developed than Will Anderson Jr.'s coming out of Alabama last year. So it could take time for him to make his mark as a starting 3-4 outside linebacker. So, do see him in that regard. Definitely one of those guys that's just a talented athlete. I just have some questions about. I didn't see him as nearly as refined, and I'm happy to see Zierlein recognize that. Will Anderson was a different type of dude. So interesting just to hear him talk about him that way. Let's go to Mr. Dane Brugler's review of his number one ranked edge rusher, Dallas Turner. 2-year starter at Alabama, played the Sam linebacker position in the 3-4 scheme, lining at both a 2 and 3 point stance. So that's good news. At least he is, obviously, again, a fit for the kind of 3-4 that the Seahawks are likely to play. As a pass rusher, Turner's quick off the ball to get underneath blocks or bury his hands into the chest of blockers, convert speed to power. Despite lacking ideal bulk, he plays physically at the point of attack and is a strong run defender. So he sees it differently than Zierlein. Aside from some missed tackles that need to be cleaned up, he has an elite competitive motor. Overall, Turner is a long, explosive edge rusher with the body twitch, hand usage, and play strength to leverage blocks and be disruptive in multiple ways. He has freaky tools to be a potential impact player in the NFL who should continue to improve as his body and rush attack mature. All right. By the way, I didn't give you his measurables. Let me do that for you. He is 6'3", 247 pounds. So this is of note, 247 pounds. And we heard that he put on 20 pounds. His frame to me does not look like it's got room to put on another 20 pounds, maybe another 10, but I don't see 20 in the type of athlete that he is. So you're talking about the lower end of the range for what we saw from Mike Macdonald's defense. Really below the low end of the range. He does have 34 and 3/8 inch arms. So, John Schneider is going to love that. As we've talked about before, arm length is something that the Seahawks do pay attention to, especially anyone near the line of scrimmage or in their cornerbacks. Okay. PFF. Quickly, we get into PFF. He had an 81.6 grade last year, had an 89.3 pass rush grade, only a 69.8 run defense grade. So we'll come back to that. When it was a true pass set, his pass rush grade was 90.7, which is encouraging. His run stop rate was only 4.2%. I don't think that's particularly good. We will find out as we go through more of these. They say, although he can continue to improve as a run defender and a tackler, Turner is first round type as an edge rusher with high ceiling pass rush traits who can contribute in year one as a bright future head. So again, that's 2 out of 3 that do not have him as a particularly elite run defender. That's concerning for me. We've seen how much that can be a problem with what we've seen from Darrell Taylor for the Seahawks. Okay, we're going to keep moving. We might circle back to some of these guys, but I did want to try to get through a few more names today. I will mention in his RAS score, he was elite in speed. He was elite in explosion. He did not do agility testing, which is kind of surprising. But he was poor in size. 34th percentile in height, 20th percentile in weight, 40th percentile in bench press. Okay. So that's kind of where I have concerns about Dallas Turner and why he's not necessarily even, I wouldn't put him as number 1 in my edge rusher rankings for the Seahawks. Okay. Let us go to number 2 on this list. Not necessarily number 2 overall, but number 2 on this list. His name's Laiatu Latu. And this guy is, I think, one of the more controversial prospects in this draft class. Some people, Mina Kimes, if you're listening, Mina is a massive fan of Mr. Latu. I'm not quite sure I'm there. So Laiatu Latu for Lance Zierlein, his rank is 4. His grade is 6.5. Dame Brugler's rank for Laiatu Latu is 3. And his big board rank is number 22 overall. PFF ranks him as their 11th highest on their big board, so higher than Dallas Turner. And his RAS score is 9.3. 9.3. Okay. So let's go back and look at Mr. Latu. And as we get into it with Mr. Zierlein, keep in mind 6.5 is boom or bust potential. That is a grade above will become a good starter within 2 years, which is a grade above will eventually be a plus starter. So this boom or bust is a little bit, I don't know how great of a phrase that is to describe, but really high ceiling is essentially the way to look at it. I think any of these guys have bust potential, but I think the boom is the part to focus on here. Interesting comparison for Lance Zierlein. His comparison for Laiatu Latu is TJ Watt. Okay. And I do want to talk size. He is 6'5", 259 pounds. So exactly in the range that Mike McDonald plays for his outside linebackers. Arm length, 32 5/8 inches. Not the longest arms, not terribly short, but not long. And Latu possesses a kind of rare maturity in his game that you usually see from NFL veterans. He rarely stays blocked by tackles as a run defender and dominates blocking tight ends on the collegiate level. His pass rush approach is both well-conceived and instinctive. He's brilliant at taking possession of the rep using clever hands and slippery angles to pry open opportunities. His eyes play beyond blockers, and he feeds off of a voracious motor that keeps him pushing forward as a run defender and a pass rusher. Concerns surrounding his neck injury while at Washington will certainly come into play when he gets to medical exams, but the durability he showed and play at UCLA are certainly promising. Everything about Latu's skill set and production is translatable to the NFL, and he could become a Pro Bowler as a 3-4 outside linebacker with heavy influence on the game. So pretty glowing for Mr. Zuerlein. Interesting that he's number 4 on his list of edge rushers. Interesting the comparison with TJ Watt. And I do want to do a quick look. TJ Watt height and weight. TJ Watt is 6'4", 251. If you're curious, Nick Bosa is 6'4", 267. So you kind of get an idea, but I didn't realize Watt was on the lighter side like that. He certainly doesn't play like that. Also worth noting here, if you don't know about Latu, he had been at University of Washington, and the doctors there medically retired him based off of a neck injury. He got clearance from UCLA and has been able to play, and obviously play at a very high level. But that's a concern, neck injuries are nothing to scoff at. And if you're spending a first-round pick on a guy, which you likely would with Latu, that is something that will be an issue. One of the things I've been curious about is his run defense, because I have seen some reason to believe he is not the best run defender. Zuerlein sees it differently. So that was good to read. We get into Dane Brugler. Dane Brugler on Laiatu Latu says, overall, Latu's medical history will play a major part in his draft grade, but he is a pass rush technician with instinctive feel and athletic bend to be an impactful two-way go rusher in the NFL. His play style and journey are reminiscent of Miami Dolphins 2021 first-rounder Jalen Phillips. Looking at a couple other things here. For pass rushers, there is a saying, beat the hands, beat the man. Latu lives by this principle with a cohesive way. He weaponizes his hands and feet to defeat blocks. Led the FBS with a 24.6% pass rush win percentage in 2023. As a run defender, his lack of ideal length and pop will show up at times. Now, this is what I thought I had seen. But he made significant improvements with his read react in that area as a senior. Okay. On the PFF big board, they have him as the number 1 pass rusher, edge rusher on their board. He had a 94.3 pass rush grade and a 94.5 true pass set pass rush grade. His pass rush run rate for them was 26%, which is outstanding. I was trying to remember, there was a couple guys that when we did defensive tackles were in the 19% range. But yeah, anyway, I'm not going to go back to that, but yes, he's very high up there. And then run defense grade was 82. So not awful, not awful. His run stop rate was 6.9%, which was higher than Dallas Turner's. Overall, though somewhat limited athletically, his home is in the offensive backfield due to his hand usage and pass rush moves that will continue to win at the NFL level. Now, we've got this athleticism conversation going on with Latu. How can a guy with a 9.30 RAS score be a limited athlete? That's a fair question. This is a guy who on the size side comes out as good. His height is in the 83rd percentile. His weight is in the 48th percentile. And I think this is because for the RAS system, he is being lumped in with 4-3 defensive ends. So I wouldn't worry about the weight there as much. Explosion grade, good. Only 54th percentile for vertical, 66th percentile for broad. So not the strongest lower body. And I think that's part of where there's some concern. His speed grade is elite, which is interesting. 93rd percentile 40-yard dash. I think that's a little bit misleading given, again, the defensive ends that we're talking about. 87th percentile 10-yard split. Agility grade is great. 8.1 or 81st percentile shuttle, 84th percentile cone. So not sure. You know, I guess Latu just doesn't have one outstanding characteristic that he dominates with. He did not do bench press. I don't think he's the strongest dude. If you look at his size. So that's just another guy that for some people he is. I'll tell you, Louis Riddick, when Bucky Brooks, when Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks did a defense-only draft, meaning they were only drafting defensive players in the first round for every team. Bucky Brooks took Latu as his first overall pick as the best defensive player in the draft. So I think it's worth just understanding. I am not as high on this guy. I can't get myself quite as excited. His numbers are pretty outstanding. I have a little bit of concerns of him holding up as a run defender. Okay, let's keep going. Next on the list is a guy you've heard me talk about quite a bit, and that is Jared Verse. Okay, and for Jared Verse, let's put in his numbers, and we are at the 31-minute mark as we talk about Mr. Verse. He is number 1 on Zerline's edge rusher ranking. He gets a 6.73 grade. He is number 2 on Dane Brugler's rank. And whoops, sorry about that, folks. And he gets a 20th overall big board rank. PFF's rank for him is 17. And his RAS score is 9.57. Oops. Okay. So Jared Verse. Let's see what Mr. Zerline says about him. His 6.73 grade translates to a year 1 starter. He is the only guy. Let me double check. Nope, that's wrong. He and Dallas Turner are both over 6.7. They are the only edge rushers that Zerline gives year 1 starter grades to at 6.7 plus. He is 6'4", 254 pounds, 33.5-inch arms. So really right in the range, what you're looking for the outside linebacker position. Ran a 4.58 40, 35-inch vert, 10.7, a 10'7" broad, 31 reps on the bench press. Dude is strong. I'm sorry, I'm watching some highlights. I wish I could put these on there, but it would get a copyright infringement from YouTube. So I gotta fix that. But in any event, Lance Zerline's comparison is Lamar Woodley. I think we can do better. For me, this is the most obscene comparison, but I'm gonna make it anyway. The comparison for me is Terrell Suggs. I don't think he is necessarily going to be as much of a Hall of Famer necessarily as Terrell Suggs, but he's a brute as a pass rusher, more than a bendy, twisty, guy. Talented edge defender with the field demeanor, athleticism, and skill set to rack up statistics in key categories fairly easily in his NFL career. Verse dominated at Albany and then showed an ability to do the same thing at Florida State. He's twitchy and compact, with explosiveness featured at the point of attack with his upfield burst as a pass rusher. He's great with his hands and does a nice job of diagnosing plays quickly and staying out of the clinches of offensive linemen looking to snatch him up. Verse's ability to threaten the edge only bolsters his hellish speed-to-power bull rushing ability to run tackles deep into the pocket. He can play up or down and should be in consideration for all defensive schemes looking to add a safe, high-impact edge rusher. NFC exec says, I think he'll be one of the best defensive players to come out of this draft. One of the things I really like about him is I think he plays the run and the pass almost equally as well. And he is incredibly physical in the way he plays the game. I think he brings a bit of juice that I really like, and I think our defense needs in Seattle. Dane Brugler says, 2-year starter at Florida State. Verse played the Fox edge rusher role in a 4-3 base scheme, standing up and rushing with his hand on the ground both ways. After receiving only one scholarship offer, he developed in one of college football's best edge rushers, collecting 29 tackles for loss and 18 sacks in his 25 games in Tallahassee. As a pass rusher, Verse can win with speed or power. This is the other thing I like about Jared Verse. I think he is not dependent just on technique. He can win with physical strength. I think he's the best speed to power guy among the edge rushers that I've seen in this class. Verse can win with speed or power and flashes violence in his hands to break down the rhythm of blockers. He sets a physical edge in the run game and is always around the football because of his awareness, effort, and fierce play personality. Overall, when he channels his relentless energy, Verse is as disruptive as anyone in this class because of his explosive get-off, power through his frame, and NFL quality hand use. His physical traits and competitive football temperament give him a high floor as an NFL starter, reminiscent of 8-year NFL veteran Dante Fowler. I don't love that comparison. Fowler was not a physical menace the way I see Jared Verse being, but the rest of that matches pretty well with my expectations and view of Jared Verse. Let's go into PFF. PFF, he has an 84 grade. It's been consistent in being around that throughout his college career. Pass rush grade, 90.8. True pass rush grade, 90.9. His run defense grade is only 65.3. So I got to acknowledge that's not as good as I would have thought. Pass rush win rate, 21.8% is excellent. Not that far off what you saw from Latu. His run stop rate, 6.6%. Verse doesn't have the longest arms, and that shows up with some pass rush counters and in tackling, but he brings his hard hat and lunch pail to every snap, wins with strength regularly, and is built like a first rounder. I will say a concern with Jared Verse, concern's the wrong word, but a demerit is his 23.4 age. Like he is over 23, halfway through his 23rd year on the planet. And so will be 24 by, later this year. That's a little bit of an older prospect. I failed to mention Latu is 23 as well. So he's a little bit older. Dallas Turner is 21. So he is much younger. And I think that does factor into these assessments. So Jared Verse, a guy that I am pretty high on. Let's keep going. Let's go ahead and go with Darius Robinson. We are now at the 38-minute mark. Darius Robinson, interestingly, falls in different places for different guys. He is, for Zerline, he is 5th on the edge defenders. He gives him a 6.37 grade. Mr. Brugler gives Darius Robinson 6th among edge rushers. He gives him a 2nd-round grade. Let's see how far down. He has him as 35th overall on his big board. It's right around where I would expect him to go. PFF has him as the 44th. And let's check out his RAS score. I think this is the latest. We'll just go with it. It is 8.66 RAS score. Okay. One of the things that I am not as excited about with Robinson is I'm just not as convinced he's a great athlete. He's a little slow-footed for me, but let's get into it and we'll find out what is just my opinion and where other people agree. All right, Darius Robinson, he gets the 6.37 grade, which is eventually will be a plus starter. He's 6'5", 285 pounds with 34.5-inch arms. Now, here's the thing. Darius Robinson started as a kind of defensive tackler playing inside, defensive end kind of player, and then he moved outside to a defensive end. And I think he's more of a 4-3 defensive end. I don't think he is a 3-4 outside linebacker. So for me, this guy, he'd have to be one of the defensive ends. I think you'd have to be talking about putting weight on him. There's not anyone that Mike McDonald played with last year that weighed in the 280 range or the 290 range. And Darius Robinson's not a guy I think that should cut weight. I don't think that makes sense. And this is where Draymond Jones is kind of a question mark for me as well for the Seahawks. Zerline's comparison is Desmond Bryant. Right out of the gate, Robinson's physical attributes should give him a potential advantage in head-to-head matchups. He has jarring power in his hands and twitchy upper body to get rid of blockers quickly. His arm length is a weapon at the point of attack. Remember, he's got 34.5-inch arms. His play can lack control and awareness at times, but the good outweighs the bad. He's a good athlete, but his pass rush is predictable. He lacks potent moves and counters as an edge rusher, leaving heavily on force. Robinson's power and motor increase the chances he becomes a good starting base end who reduces inside on third downs. So again, that does not sound like an outside linebacker in a 3-4. Let's go ahead and look at it on Dane Brugler's list. 3-year starter at Missouri, Robinson played 6 technique defensive end and former defensive coordinator's 4-2-5 scheme. After playing primarily inside as an underclassman, moved to the edge, as we talked about. As a super senior, had a breakout season while battling injuries, leading the Tigers in tackles for loss with 14 and sacks, 8.5. A power-based rusher, Robinson wears down blockers with his upper body strength and aggressive hand usage, deploying his anaconda arms to swallow ball carriers in the run game. Though athletic for his size, he lacks ideal get-off and lateral burst and needs more of a plan to cut down on wasted movement. Overall, Robinson is straight out of central casting with his frame, length, and power at contact, but he needs to introduce better skill and efficiency to his game for quicker sheds versus NFL blocking. He projects as a base end and either an odd or even front who can shift inside in sub packages. Again, 4-3 defensive end is what I'm seeing from that. PFF, 78.4 pass rush grade, 83.2 on true pass set. So it's good that he sees an increase there. Run defense grade, 81.4. So much better than the other guys. 17% pass rush win rate is pretty good. 8% run stop rate. Says Robinson's a powerful lineman who can line up anywhere from 0 to 7 technique. He won't win with much speed at the next level, but he certainly can with power. His strength profile projects to a rotational role as a floor with starting potential if he continues to hone his pass rush plans. On the RAS score for Darius Robinson, he gets a great speed grade. He has a 4.95 40. Why is that a great grade? Because it's taking into account his size. He's 285 pounds. If you're talking about for these other guys, he's not nearly as fast as the other guys that we've been talking about. His explosion grade's elite, 99th percentile, 98th percentile. I can't quite tell. 98th percentile vertical jump, 85th percentile broad. So I think that the issue there, again, is I just don't know that he fits with what the Seahawks are going to do on defense. I'm not sure I'm not sure where he fits. He could put on weight and be a defensive end, but that's just a different kind of player. That's where Mike Morris will likely be. I can definitely see that's where Jaron Reed could be. That's where we could see Leonard Williams. I don't know. A lot of different guys. I'm just not sure that Darius Robinson's the most logical fit in that situation. Let's go to the next guy on our list. Marshawn Kneeland at the 45-minute mark of the show. Let's take a look at where Marshawn Kneeland fits in this list. He's well down, so I'm going to have to do a little counting. For Lance Zierlein, he's 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12th. 12th. Marshawn Kneeland, 12th for Lance Zierlein, and he receives a grade of 6.16. Dane Brugler has Marshawn Kneeland as 5. So quite a difference there. And he projects him right at the borderline of first and second round as 32nd on his big board, so above Darius Robinson. PFF has Marshawn Kneeland as 58. So you really see the wide disparity on Marshawn Kneeland. It's part of the reason I wanted to make sure we talked about him. He had a RAS grade, sparkling one, of 9.54. And this is part of what has people excited about him. So let's start on Marshawn Kneeland with his Lance Zierlein profile. 6.16 says good backup with potential to develop into starter. He is 6'3", 267 pounds with 34.5-inch arms. I got to tell you, that fits a lot. That ticks a lot of boxes for Mike McDonald's defense and for John Schneider. Long arms. That's like, he's not quite as tall, so that's an issue, but you got the length in the arms. That's pretty close to Jadeveon Clowney, other than a couple inches of height in terms of size. I'm not saying he's Jadeveon Clowney, but fits that profile. Let's see. Kneeland is a former high school tight end, and his open field agility can be seen when he's pursuing the football around the field. He deals consequential first blows to opponents that often create openings for him to generate movement as a run defender or pass rusher. Teams might drop him in as a 4-3 base end, but he's actually a more consistent playmaker when he's standing, surveying and using as his athleticism rather than fist fighting at the point of attack. He's a forceful rusher with a relatively simple game plan, but he does have enough bend to diversify somewhat. There are some mismatched pieces in his game, but he offers toughness and talent to mold. Interesting. Marshawn Kneeland for Dane Brugler says, a 3-year starter. Kneeland was an edge rusher in their 4-man attack, was lowly recruited. He improved each season in college and arguably the best single tape of any pass rusher in 2023 with what he did against Eastern Michigan. When shopping for pass rushers, give me the guys who hate to be blocked. Kneeland certainly qualifies, as he uses his long arms and bully hands to get loose. Though he lacks the rush savvy that leads to high-end production, he is explosive in his movements with the power to push the pockets or plant ball carriers. Overall, Kneeland is still taking classes in the art of the pass rush, but he is charged up into contact and displays twitch throughout his frame, which allows him to defeat blockers in different ways. He projects as a starting base end whose best football is yet to come. Interesting. Let's look at PFF. He is 22, almost 23, by the way. 84.7 pass rush grade, 83.4 run defense grade. His true pass set pass rush grade goes up to 87. His pass rush win rate, 17.3%. Run stop rate, 11%. Now, again, different level of play, so you want dominance, but I think it is worth calling out. Those are pretty impressive numbers. Overall, his competition wasn't the best. Well, I just said that, but he absolutely dominated. especially in 2023. NFL teams will love his passion for physical play. He has the body, explosiveness, and mentality of an NFL contributor. Kneeland's film looks like a car crash from an action movie in a good way. He puts his big body on the line every snap, and he doesn't want to run around his blockers. He wants to run through them. His pass rush profile is built around an all-out bull rush. He also looks to combine his gap shooting ability and good first step with a violent rip move to get free. He has been an impactful run defender, frequently making tackles for loss. He's a bit stiff when it comes to changing direction and doesn't have the deepest bag of pass rush move, as he prefers to win with strength more than finesse. I think that's an interesting profile for the Seahawks. And if we get to his RAS grade, 95th percentile athlete here. Where he struggles is on his size. He 6'3" is a 61st percentile height. Bench press only 21 reps, so a little bit lower on the strength there. His explosion grades, elite, 99th percentile. Broad jump, vertical jump, 99th percentile. Broad jump, 99th percentile. 40-yard dash, 99th percentile. 10-yard split, 98th percentile. Agility grades, elite. Shuttle, 99th, almost 100 percentile, 9.97. His 3-cone grade, 97th percentile. So, you're talking about a guy that played at lower level of competition, who dominated and has 99th percentile level traits among other NFL prospects for the position. So I think that makes Marshawn Kneeland a guy that I think is very interesting for the Seahawks, someone to watch. And let me double check. 30 visits, Seahawks. I'm pretty sure the Seahawks have had him in for a 30 visit. Let's go here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe not. Let me double check one thing. Yeah, I'm seeing in some places that he is a 30 visit. That's what I thought. So maybe it just wasn't in the one I was looking at. Yes. So it seems like maybe it was a combine visit. Maybe it wasn't a 30 visit. In any event, they have met with him. That's the point that's worth knowing. I'm not surprised. He is a very interesting prospect for the Seahawks. So Marshawn Kneeland, if you didn't know him, you should. I think he's one to watch for the Seahawks. Hawks fan Matt Man says, crazy how disparate some of these grades are for the same player. Agreed. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're looking at these, and appreciate you for being a YouTube member. Really appreciate it. All right, let's keep going. At the 53-minute mark, we are going to go and talk about Chop Robinson. All right, another name that we've heard a lot about. For Zerline, he ranks 3rd on his list. He gives him a 6.50 grade. Dane Brugler, where does he have Chop Robinson? He has Chop Robinson as number 4 on his list. He gives him a 1st to 2nd round grade, 26th overall. So even though, if you don't remember, for Dane Brugler, he can give someone a borderline grade, even if the pick 26 would be in the 1st round. He's not, maybe only 20 guys actually get true 1st round grades. That's pretty typical for the NFL. PFF on Chop Robinson, they have him as 43rd overall on their big board. And his RAS score is going to be amazing because this is what's got him more than anything else. This is what's got him super high on a lot of people's list. He has a 9.71 RAS score, 97th percentile athlete at the position. We'll talk about that. So what do people say about Chop Robinson? Let's start with Lance Zierlein. He is, by the way, 6'5" is boomer bust potential. He has the same grade as Laiatu Latu. Same grade. He is ranked above him, but he has the same grade. He is 6'3", 254, 32.5-inch arms. So a little bit shorter, and I mean, he's the same height as Kneeland, but shorter arms. 32.5 is not great. And then 254 is a little bit on the lighter side. He also has small hands, 9 1/8 inch hands. So I don't know, man. I have some questions about that. Lance Zierlein's comparison is Micah Parsons. So, all right, let's go and hear what he has to say. Edge defender who offers the type of elite athleticism we've seen from players like Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett. Robinson might not be as fast as Parsons, but he's close. He's ultra twitchy with the explosiveness to get on top of blockers and overwhelm them in an instant. However, we will need to level up his hand skills and attack angles to reach his potential against NFL tackles. Robinson's electric athletic traits alone should give him his floor as a good NFL starter. If he crafts a rush approach and learns to string moves and counters together, he could reach his ceiling as a destructive force capable of forcing teams to game plan around him. That is a glowing review. Let's talk about what Dane Brugler says. I will say, from a production standpoint, I'm just going to call this out. Chop Robinson did not have more than 5.5 sacks in any 1 year at Penn State. He did not have more than 10 tackles for a loss. He only had double-digit tackles for a loss once. In his senior season, he had 4 sacks and 7.5 tackles for a loss. This gives me pause. Like, I get the elite athleticism, but I want to look up real quick. Micah Parsons college stats. I don't think they're going to look like that. And again, I haven't done this beforehand, so maybe I'm going to eat crow right here. He also went to Penn State. In his 2019 season, he had 14 sacks. He had 5 sacks and 14 tackles for loss. Maybe I'm going to eat crow here. I mean, is that really the case? He was that low of a production guy? Looks like it. Looks like it. So maybe I'm wrong. It's fascinating. I didn't know that. Okay. So Dane Brugler on Chop Robinson, a 1-year starter at Penn State. That's also a little concerning. Robinson, it was a wide-aligned pass rusher, informer, blah, 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 standing up and rushing with his hand on the ground. After 1 season at Maryland, he transferred to Penn State, partly because he wanted to remain a pass rusher instead of moving to linebacker, and was one of the most disruptive players in the country. 42.7% of his tackles the past 2 seasons came in the backfield. While some pass rushers require a runway to build up speed, Robinson accelerates 0 to 60 in a blink. Creating instant suddenness from his spot to shoot gaps or win races to the corner, he shows natural pass rush instincts and uses a variety of swats, swipes, and dips to evade blocks. Although his counters need further development, he is a tougher run defender than expected, but is slightly undersized and could use additional bulk to better match up with NFL blockers. Overall, Robinson needs to continue developing to prove he isn't a one-trick pony. But his first step explosiveness and aggressive hands give him the potential to be the most dynamic pass rusher in this class. He's ideally suited as a wide 9 defender who can be schemed across the front. Wide 9 is like essentially like the farthest out gap on the line, outside the shoulder of the tackle, and using your speed to get up and around the guy. Let's go and see on PFF. They gave him a 92.3 pass rush grade, 76.9 run defense grade. His true pass set pass rush grade was 93.1. He had a 20.9% pass rush win rate, a 5.9% run stop rate. Not the greatest on run. Robinson is an alien-like athlete. He has some jaw-dropping plays where he can fire off the line and get into the backfield with ease. However, outside of his first step and fast hands, he is an incomplete pass rusher. Most of his backfield production comes from feasting off an inferior tackle if he's facing one that week. He could also struggle with length against NFL caliber tackles. His pass rush profile needs to expand, and he does have a regular rotation of pass rush moves. He does not have a regular rotation of pass rush move and counters when he doesn't win just based off his athleticism. He's a strong run defender, but has some reps where he gets out of his gap to try to make his play. Unlocking a lot of what leaves you wanting more from Robinson is coachable. Unlocking that is the key for him to go from a boom or bust athlete to a dominant edge defender. Now, his RAS score. His size is poor. 38th percentile height, 37th percentile weight. He did not do bench press. His explosion grade's great. 4.5-inch vertical, 80th percentile, 10-foot broad, 98th percentile, 40-yard dash, 99th percentile, 4.48. Like, that's linebacker fast. That's Bobby Wagner fast. 10-yard split, 99th percentile. Shuttle grade, 92nd percentile. So just a really twitched up athlete. I am concerned about the production. It makes me feel a little bit better that Micah Parsons had such little production in college, but that is Chop Robinson. Okay, we're going to keep moving. We're going to go another name, and another one that is a Penn State name, Adisa Isaac. And this is a guy that you might not have heard as much about, but we're going to talk about him. And we are going to start with his Lance Zierlein. So we're doing this at the 1 hour mark. Adisa Isaac is 3.68 on Zierlein's rank. He gets a 6.23 grade. Brugler ranks Adisa Isaac as 7 on his board. Brugler's grade for him is 2nd to 3rd round, 65th overall. PFF rank for Adisa Isaac is 50th. And his RAS score is 8.96. All right. No shock that the guy that I had the least amount of excitement of had the lowest RAS score. I just love great athletes, but I like powerful athletes. So let's talk more about Adisa Isaac. Let's learn about him together. I feel like nobody's talked about him, but he's pretty well regarded. He is 6'4", 247 pounds, 33 7/8 inch, almost 34-inch arms. So that's he's a little light, but definitely in the range for outside linebacker. He will eventually be an average starter, according to Lance Zierlein's grade. Definitely a fluid-looking athlete. Lance Zierlein compares him to Chase Winovich. Heavy-handed, heavy edge prospect combining traits, tools, and motor to create playmaking opportunities. Isaac plays with good recognition and awareness of his surroundings both before and after the gap. His snap quickness combines with active hands feet to help him work his way around blocks at a solid clip. He's primarily an outside rusher with a decent inside move, but he needs to do a better job of developing counters and learning to work back under the top of the rush to keep from being redirected. The anchor strength needs improvement to become a more consistent edge setter and rush finisher, but his production, length, and motor could eventually earn him a starting job as a 3-4 rush linebacker. Curious when we get to him here with Brugler. He had more sacks than Mr. Robinson last year for Penn State. He had 7.5 sacks. He had 16 tackles for loss. So he had double-digit tackle for loss production in the back-to-back years. And what they say, a 2-year starter at Penn State. Isaac lined up as an edge rusher. His tape and production improved each season, culminated with him leading the Nittany Lions in both tackles for loss and sacks as a senior. Accounted for 27 tackles for loss over his 26 games the last 2 seasons. With his package of traits, Isaac's athletic twitch as a pass rusher and promising point of attack skills in the run game stand out on tape. However, his inefficiency at contact and freelancing tendencies are a few of several areas that remain a work in progress. Overall, Isaac needs to mature his approach to be more than a flash player, but with his length, his energy, and athletic tools, he can become an impactful edge presence for a defensive coordinator who continues to unlock his potential. Though he projects best standing up in a 3-4, he has something to offer any NFL scheme as a role player starting upside. Sees him as similar to the Philadelphia Eagles' Josh Sweat. All right. This guy, we're getting into like second, third round grade guys. These are not the first round grade guys that we've seen from these others. I think it's worth calling him out. What does PFF say? 72.9% pass rush grade, not great. Run defense grade of 82. That's actually better. True pass set pass rush grade 78. Pass rush win rate 13% is not great. Run stop rate of 11.4 is pretty good. He's 22 years old. They say he's a very solid edge prospect. He is a stout run defender, even at a low weight. If Isaac can pack on extra pounds for added strength and anchor ability while remaining adequately explosive, he has the handwork and pass rush profile to be an NFL starter. Okay, that was Adisa Isaac. Let's get into Chris Braswell, who the second teammate we're going to have talked about in today's deep dive. Braswell's a guy I'm interested in for a few different reasons, but let's get into it here. Lance Zierlein has Braswell as his 7th ranked pass rusher, edge rusher. He gives him a 6.25 grade. Dane Brugler has him as the 8th. So they're pretty aligned on Braswell. He has them as the 67th overall on his big board. PFF has Braswell as much higher. They've got him 41st on their big board, and his RAS score is 8.68. Okay. So, Mr. Braswell, let's learn about you together. Lance Zierlein, first of all, he's 6'3", 251 pounds, 33.25 inch arms. So a little shorter, a little lighter. He's kind of a Uchenna Nwosu, like similar size there, similar weight. Let's just do a quick check on Mr. Let's see. Uchenna Nwosu, 6'2", 251, 33 5/8 inch arms when he came out. So he had longer arms, but pretty close. Pretty close. And for what it's worth, he was drafted in the 2nd round, and he had a 6.20 grade. This is Uchenna Nwosu, which will eventually be an average starter. Mr. Braswell has a 6.25 grade, so almost identical. So I think Uchenna Nwosu is probably a decent comp to be thinking of here. Zierlein says edge defender with good size and length, but Really? But limited playing time over 4 years at Alabama. Braswell chose to stick it out at Alabama rather than transferring and was rewarded with a productive final campaign. He doesn't play with great technique or anchor as an edge setter and is average in taking on inline tight ends at the point of attack. As a pass rusher, he gets off the ball with good burst and uses a variety of moves, speeds, and angles and creates opportunities, but he needs to add counters to his approach. Braswell might have a ceiling as a good 3-4 backup or average designated pass rusher with core special teams value. Not exciting. What does Brugler say? By the way, production-wise, he had 8 sacks last year, 10.5 tackles for loss. A 1-year starter at Alabama, outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme, lining up 2 and 3-point stances. He took over for Will Anderson in 2023, and he led the SEC in pressures with 56, one ahead of his teammate Dallas Turner, who had 55. Both as a pass rusher and a run defender, Braswell has a rugged, high-effort play demeanor and uses his aggressive reach hands to bully blockers and set hard edges. He has explosive flashes, but often stalls out at the top of his rush and needs to expand the ways he wins as a pass rusher. Overall, Braswell is slightly undersized and still a work in progress in several areas, but his first step, quickness, and ability to convert speed to power are solid starting points for developmental pass rusher. He has down-the-road starting potential and reminds me of Cincinnati Bengals Joseph Asai when he was coming out of Texas. On the big board for PFF, 87.9 pass rush grade, 67.2 run defense. His true pass rush grade is 85. So he does drop a little bit. One of the first guys we've seen drop his pass rush grade, although still good. 18.2% pass rush win rate, 5.4 run stop rate. Impressive athlete on the edge, has first step explosiveness, pursuit speed, and natural strength are all starting caliber in the NFL. His speed to power bull rush moves even the biggest. His speed to power bull rush moves even the biggest offensive tackle back at least 2 or 3 steps. It's taken some time for him to hone his fundamentals and get on the field as a starting outside linebacker. It didn't help that Will Anderson Jr. was in front of him. He has some inconsistencies. Even so, this kind of athlete wins at the professional level. Even if he doesn't become a pass rush technician, Braswell's power, speed, and length present rotational role as a floor and impact starter as a ceiling. So you see PFF much higher on him than I think either Dane Brugler or Lance Zierlein. And as far as his RAS score goes, he did not do agility testing, which is a little bit of a concern for an edge player. He has elite speed, 96th percentile 40-yard dash, 97th percentile 10-yard split. Explosion is okay, 70th percentile roughly there. His size is small. So I don't know where Zierlein or whoever it was saying his size and length. I didn't see that. Good chance to welcome in a new member, Chris Clark. Thank you for joining as a YouTube member. Love having new folks join. You can join. The link is in the chat if you scroll up, and also it's in the description of the video. It's a great time to join. Give the show a like and click subscribe as well. Appreciate that. And welcome again to Chris Clark as a YouTube member. All right, next on the list, I think we're going to be able to have time for maybe a couple of more. Let's do Bralen Trice. We know Bralen pretty well here in Washington, but where does he rank for all these different folks? So for Lance Zierlein, 3, 6, 2, 9, 10th. He is 10th on Zierlein's list. He gets a 6.19 grade. For Mr. Brugler, he is 10th on that list, and he gets a 3rd round grade, 82nd overall. On the PFF big board, he gets a 69 ranking. And his RAS score, this is part of what killed him, I think, but is 7.49. First guy we've talked about below 8 in the RAS score. I'm going to give you the high level on Trice for these guys because we know him pretty well, and I want to get to some of the other guys. But let's just talk about it. 6.19, as a reminder, is good backup with the potential to develop into a starter. 6'3.5", 245. Now, that's what he weighed in at there. I thought he reweighed in. 1 second. Bralen Trice weight pro day. Where is it? I could have sworn he weighed in higher at his pro day. I'm going to keep looking because I could have sworn. I'm stubborn about this stuff. Where did it go? I know I saw this somewhere. I thought it was like 259 pounds is what I remember. If somebody has it and you want to put it in chat, that would be great. But I could have sworn whatever. I could have sworn he weighed in back over 250. But in any event, lighter on the weight side. So back to this. Zerline, 6'3.5", 32.5-inch arms. So not the longest arms either. He had a tough combine because he was sick, and he just did not perform that well. He did better at his pro day. Team captain with good size, who's well liked. Trice isn't going to be the most skilled edge defender, but his parlays urgency and effort into impressive production. He has a thick frame, but lacks juice as an edge rusher and fails to stack and control tackles as a run defender. Better fit for fronts that like to do games like twists with defensive ends. Try hard demeanor and play strength give him a chance to be a decent backup end in a 4-3 defense. That's what Mr. Zerline says. Brugler says, let's see, finished number 1 in the FBS in total pressures in both 2022 and 2023. He had 78 pressures last year. As a pass rusher, Trice is quick off the ball. Yeah, I appreciate that Hawks fan Matt Man says he was 245 at the combine. That is what he was at the combine. I am 98% sure that the story was that he lost weight because he was sick, and then at his pro day, he reweighed in, and he's back to like 259. So if someone can find that for me, it'd be great. But I know his pro day weight was different and heavier than his combine weight. As a pass rusher, Trice is quick off the ball, is best using his skilled heavy hands, bull rushing instincts to convert speed to power. You can feel his competitive edge on tape, but he doesn't play loose at the top of his rush and frequently is step slow to shed. Overall, Trice doesn't have exceptional edge speed or length and needs to be more consistent in the run game, but his athletic urgency and violent play style will help translate his college disruption to the pros. He projects as a scheme-diverse, rotational NFL end. PFF gives him a 90.8 pass rush grade, 72.1 run defense grade. His true pass rush grade is 91.9. Pass rush win rate 17.6, run stop 6.3. This is a powerful edge player who will never shy away from contact trench play demands. You might have to line him a bit wider to unlock his disruption potential, but he's NFL caliber and should be picked in the top 50. Interesting, given they've given him a 69 grade rank. So I think the combine really blew it for Bralen Trice. The weight is going to freak out a lot of people. 7.49 RAS is not great. Arm length is not great. His 40-yard dash was better, even though I think he's faster than what he ran there. 83rd percentile. His agility grade, this is where I think he stands out. He had a 96th percentile shuttle, 74th percentile 3 cone. So I don't know that he is. I think he's actually a decent size for. Thank you. Robert Day says 259 pounds at his pro day. I could have sworn that was the case. I couldn't find it. Thank you for confirming it, Robert. 259 pounds. So at 259, 6'3", led FBS in pressures. This might be a guy that is going to fall down draft boards. He was in the first round projections forever to start when mock drafts were starting. He was a first round guy. I was like, I don't think Bralen Trice is a first round talent. So just to be totally clear, but he was up there. And now after the combine, he really is tanked. He could be a guy that shows up in the third round. I think Bralen Trice in the third round is a good value pick. I think this guy has potential to be better than Derek Hall, who was a high second round pick. So I like Bralen Trice. I like his competitiveness. I think he shows up at the right moments. He is the kind of guy that will be a 10-year NFL vet. I could just see him playing forever and just being a guy that constantly is getting 5 to 7 sacks in a season. I don't know that he's a starter dominant kind of guy, but I definitely think he's going to be a productive player in the NFL. All right. We're at the 1 hour and 21 minute mark. Let's pick one more guy. We will do Jonah Elliss. I think we can only probably get one more guy on this list done in this time frame. And let's see where. Well, he is way down. That's okay. Let's just do it. Let's do it. We're gonna do Jonah Elliss. He is far down on Lance Zierlein's list. So unfortunately, they don't number these, so I've got to count 6, 9, 12, 15. He is 16th on Zierlein's rank, 6.12 grade. So it's interesting. Like, although he's very low down, that's not the lowest grade. For Mr. Brugler, he is 11th. And he gives him a 3rd to 4th round grade, 94 overall. PFF. Wow. PFF. Do they have him listed as something else? Oh, no. 53rd on the PFF. And I don't think he has a RAS score. I don't think he did testing. So we will skip that. Jonah Elliss, he is got a good backup with potential to develop into a starter as his grade. 6'2", 248 pounds, 33-inch arms. So longer arms. Elliss comes from a family filled with football players, both past and present. He lacks ideal size and athleticism on the edge, but that could be said the same about his brother Caden when he was a prospect, and now he's a highly productive NFL linebacker. Jonah plays with a motor that exposes blockers who aren't finishers. He doesn't have enough sand in his pants to anchor and hold the NFL edge in the run game, but he assaults the pocket with varied approaches and good inside spin counter. He needs more muscle, but could become a rotational 3-4 rush linebacker and above average special team quality. What does Brugler say? Overall, Elliss is an inconsistent edge setter in the run game, but he is threatening with his upfield burst motor and skilled with his hands in the pass rush. It is encouraging to think of what he can develop into with a full bag of counters. His pro ceiling is an Alex Highsmith style edge defender, although a high-end sub-package rusher is his more realistic NFL projection. PFF gives him a 90.1 pass rush grade, 67.3 run defense. His true pass rush grade 90.6, 17.7 pass rush win rate, 5.7 run stop rate. For him to remain a difference maker like he was in 2023, he will have to get stronger. If he can add weight but remain as quick and flexible, he can be an impactful pass rusher. So that's Jonah Elliss. Let's do one more, and we're gonna do a little bit of a. We're gonna switch up. We're gonna do Austin Booker. So forgive me for the head fake here. Shoot. Austin Booker. And let's see, do we have what we need to do him? Austin will be our last guy of the day. He ranks, part of the reason I wanted to do this, he ranks highly on Zerline's. He is 6th on Zerline's list. He gets a 6.3 grade. For Dane Brugler, he is 9th on his list, and he gets a 3rd round grade, 78th overall. PFF has Austin Booker as 77th, and his RAS score is 7.05. So lowest athletic profile we have seen so far today. And Austin Booker. Really quick, we will do him. He is at 6.3, will eventually be a plus starter, according to Zerline. 6'4.5", 240 pounds. So really light. That's a concern. 33 7/8 inch arms. That is appealing. So very long, tall, and with long arms. That's a pretty appealing combination. Little light, though. Very light. NFL comparison by Zerline is Max Crosby. Jesus. Truly unique prospect combining tremendous upside with extremely limited sample size. A more conservative approach on Booker's grade might be prudent, but it becomes a difficult route to take when observing his length, explosive athleticism, and rush talent. Booker needs to get bigger and stronger, but that will come. The diversity of his rush approach is unheard of for a player with so little playing time. He can stride and dip at the top of the rush or beat tackles back inside with a Euro step or spin counter. He can stab and long arm tackles into the pocket and stay separated from them at the point of attack. He chases quarterbacks and running backs with agility and burst, but can be inconsistent dealing with the downhill running game. His reps against talented Texas left tackle Kelvin Banks could be the springboard to push this gifted edge defender with monster traits up the draft board towards an exciting NFL career. That is why I do these, because I am surprised at that level of positive evaluation for Austin Booker. Dane Brugler says, a sub-package player at Kansas, Booker lined up wide of the offensive line in 2- and 3-point stances. After he saw only 23 defensive snaps in his 2 seasons at Minnesota, Booker transferred to Kansas for the 2023 season, and he led the team in sacks with 8. And he had 13 tackles for loss and forced 2 fumbles. Despite coming off the bench, he averaged only 40.2 snaps per game. Although he is still figuring out how and when to access his bag of tricks, Booker instinctively uses his rangy frame to create various leverage point and surprise blockers with his forceful hands. He is lean in his lower half, but he plays well versus the run to stack, stay balanced through contact, and track the football. Overall, Booker is lacking in body mass and overall experience with just 505 snaps, but he is an ascending player with the ability to maximize his athletic traits, body length, force with proper biomechanics. With his tools and instincts, he projects as a rotational player in year 1 with potential to become an impact starter. That's interesting. He's 21 years old. So I think that's part of what they're talking about. On the big board, Austin Booker had an 80.6 pass rush grade, 78.5 run defense grade, 88.2 true pass set pass rush grade, 14.8% pass rush win rate, 10.2% run stop grade. That's pretty good. His RAS score of 7.05 is not great. His size, his weight is under the 1 percentile. So that's why. Explosion grade's good. 84th percentile broad jump, speed grade, good, not elite. He didn't have any like elite pieces there, but when you got 6'4" with 34-inch arms, and he's been able to be that productive with that little snaps, that's why people get excited. So interesting, I guess. In kind of wrapping with the edge players here, I thought Austin Booker's a guy that I'm glad we did, because he wasn't on my radar as much. More interesting guy. I don't know that I'm interested in him in the first 2 rounds, but maybe a 3rd round option for the Seahawks. I also have some, the comparisons Chop Robinson with Micah Parsons is fascinating, and I did not know that Micah Parsons had as little productivity in his college career. I don't think Darius Robinson's a fit. I just don't think. I don't know exactly where he fits for the Seahawks and what they're trying to do, so I'm not sure Darius Robinson's a fit. Of the big guys at the top, the first round guys, I'm still a Jared Verse only guy. Laiatu Latu is interesting to me, and a lot of people that know football really well are really impressed by him. So take that. I am listening to that, but my instincts are hesitant on him. So Jared Verse is the guy I'd want if they're going to go first round edge. That's the guy that would get me most excited. If you're talking about later, Chop Robinson being available in the 2nd round would be great, but I don't think he's going to be. That's assuming the Seahawks get a 2nd round pick. But then Austin Booker is kind of an interesting name later on. Bralen Trice, if he falls later, which he might, could be an interesting 3rd round or later type of player. Okay. There was a request for me to do a mock draft. And you know what? Why not? Let's do a quick mock draft. And what I'm going to do is I am going to use the ESPN simulator. So let me switch up, stop sharing this screen, and I will switch to, is this the right screen? I don't know. Let's see. Let me ESPN mock draft simulator. This is a new mock draft simulator, folks. So, what the heck? 1 second while I get it up. Okay. And let me move this over here, and I will share my screen. There we go. All right, so hopefully you guys are able to see that okay. We'll do a quick 7-round mock, and we'll make it fast. And I will pick the Seattle Seahawks, and we're going to load the draft. We're going to go light speed. Okay, here we go. We are at the 16th overall pick. Jared Verse goes ahead of us. Talisi Fuaga goes ahead of us. Dallas Turner, who we talked about, goes ahead. Okay. So available here, Troy Fautanu, Latu, Byron Murphy, Chop Robinson. Let's go ahead and see what trade options we look at. I think, well, you know what? I'm going to do something different. We heard from Matt Miller yesterday that 16 is the floor for one Byron Murphy. So let's make that true. That means that they don't trade back. Byron Murphy is available here. They take Byron Murphy. I certainly wouldn't hate that for a number of different reasons. Now we get all the way to the 3rd round. And another guy that's jumping up a lot of lists is Cedric Gray. So an interesting name here. We talked about Cole Bishop. I think that's a little early. Dominic Pooney is a guy here. Michael Hall being available. I mean, you can't take him and Murphy, but I gotta say that's pretty appealing to me. Trevin Wallace is another name that's been gaining a lot of steam. Mike Sanistril, I think, is going to be an excellent player, but maybe a little bit redundant with what the Seahawks already have. I am going to go ahead and pick a guy that's increasing on my board, which is Dominic Pooney. I liked what we've learned about him. And if you'd listened to the interior offensive line deep dive, I thought there were some interesting pieces on him. I think he might be a good fit. It'd be hard for me to pass on Ricky Pearsall. I think he's a really good player. Cedric Gray is interesting, but I'm going to go with Pooney. So we're going to go interior defensive line, interior offensive line, and now we are at pick 102. And there's Jonah Elliss, who we heard a little bit about. Let's look at edge rushers, since we just did that today. They don't have edge as an option. Brennan Jackson, who we did not do today, outside linebacker is probably where, yeah. So none of the guys that we looked at are even available at this pick. Let's go ahead. This has some weird oddities, I think, here. So you are in the 4th round. I think Cedric Gray becomes a great pick here. I think that's pretty much the no-brainer pick here. Scrolling down. Yeah, I mean, Spencer Rattler certainly is a name to be aware of. Satua Lamea is interesting. I'm going to go ahead with Cedric Gray. And then here we are, pick 118. At this point, I actually am interested in Brendan Rice. I think that's a pretty good place to take him. I like him as a receiver, and I think he has some good upside. Spencer Rattler here, I know other folks would be excited about. I'm curious. Tip Ryman's a little bit later. Roll the dice. We're going to go ahead and take Brendan Rice. I think he's an interesting receiver to consider for this draft and maybe help with replacing Tyler Lockett next year and also piss off 49ers fans, which I'm always happy to do. Here we are in the 6th round. Tip Ryman's available. He is always going to be my pick in that situation. You guys know I'm a big Tip Ryman guy. 2nd pick in the 6th round. Now we're a little farther down the list. Nathaniel Watson's a name we've talked about a fair amount. Michael Barrett is another name we've talked about. We've not gone safety. James Williams or Malik Mustafa. We have not taken a James Williams in the draft. Let's go ahead and take James Williams. Interesting guy. Cam Chancellor size guy at safety, could also potentially be linebacker. And then with our last pick, Eric All is a pretty good pick at this point. Devin Culp. Just scrolling down here, seeing if anybody jumps out for me on this lower list where they don't like somebody, but I do. Yeah, so let's take I think Jalen Harrell is an interesting name. We didn't get into him, but we're going to go ahead and take Jalen Harrell. And here is our draft. So Byron Murphy, Dominic Pooney, Cedric Gray, Brendan Rice, Tip Ryman, James Williams, and Jalen Harrell. One of the interesting things with the ESPN mock draft simulator is it tells you the chances that the player would be available at that pick by their estimation, and then whether they'd be available at the next pick. With Byron Murphy, they say there's a 55% chance he'll be available at 16. So decent chance. Dominic Pooney, again, 54% chance, 18% chance he'd be available at the next pick. I think those are usually like decent values by analytics perspective. Cedric Gray in the 4th round, they say there's a 66% chance he'll be available. I don't think so, not based on what I'm seeing. So I think the sim's a little off on that player. Brendan Rice, 39% chance he'd be available at pick 118. I think that's right. I think that's pretty late for him to be there. Tip Ryman, they say 89% he'd be available at round 6. I don't agree. James William, they say 64% he'd be available at this pick at 215. That could be true. Jalen Harrell, 85% pick that he'd be available. So I like this draft. I don't hate this draft. Byron Murphy's great. I think Pooney can be a quality starting guard. Cedric Gray has potential as a linebacker and can develop behind the guys they've got. Brendan Rice could be a number 3 receiver as early as next year at 2025. Tip Ryman, I think, can be a quality tight end. So I think this is a decent draft. With that, folks, I am going to wrap for the day. Thank you so much for tuning in for another Hawk Blogger Morning. If you haven't already, please give the show a like, click subscribe, join as a YouTube member. The link is in the video description as well as in the chat, and go to patreon.com/hawkblogger where you can find all of these podcasts, the audio versions available right after we're done with the video versions, and you can get access to the Slack channel. So thank you for joining. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your day. This has been another edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings.